Hello, beautiful mamas, and welcome to the Unstoppable Mom Summit, where we're going to help you step up, break free, and thrive. So, today, as all of the other days, I am so excited because I have a mama on here who is going to help you all break free from the idea that you have to do all this alone. Because honestly, we can't do it alone. So I would love to introduce to you all Miss Laura. Laura, tell them hello.
Hi, Miss Dundies. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm Laura Lyles Reagan, a parent coach by day, mama who successfully launched two awesome, powerful young women. That's my big claim to fame, but also a family sociologist.
I absolutely love it. So before we get all the way into this, I would love to hear just a little bit of your story about how you even got to where you are now.
Sure. Um, my primary message to parents is something that I have lived, and it is that you can mess up, have life challenges, and still find that way to thrive, which is what our summit's all about, right? Still find a way to navigate to this idea of thriving. My girls and I went through a divorce and family alcoholism. I'm sober 24 years myself. Um, and we went through all of that and had our own, struggles, power struggles, trauma, real life happening. Once they hit the preteen years and the hormones, I was struggling a lot. I ran a nonprofit for youth development and found that I wasn't really connecting with my girls at home. And that just did not sit well, particularly because we had been through, these family issues. And so I wanted to find a way to connect with them that was authentic, that allowed them to step up and be heard, and prepare them for the skills that they needed for life. But it had to be real, and so I used my research as a family sociologist and a researcher in youth development to come up with this family communication model. It's not rocket science or new, but the way that I use the skills in a stair step way is because I connect with them and they connect with me authentically. And I know that word gets used a lot these days, but the living proof is they are 35 and 28 and they still talk to me. They call up and ask for advice. I have a grandson now, so I know this stuff works because we healed from our family trauma and have wonderful relationships today. Not perfect. I'm an imperfect mama. But that's the good stuff, right? Because then they get to accept their humanity because
Oh
I've
my gosh.
accepted mine.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. So one thing you said was accepting your humanity and just
Yes.
meeting your kids where they are. Like that is amazing because I believe that as moms, we often feel like we have to be perfect. And
Hmm.
I believe that perfect actually pushes us away from who we are, but also pushes us away from our kids.
It doesn't
So
help them, right? They don't prepare for life by us holding up this standard of perfection. So when I screw up, if I go back, and excuse me for using that, but that's just the truth. When I mess up, I go back and I repair. I was stressed. I projected that onto you. I didn't hear where you were, and I'm sorry. And can we try again?
I love
Try
that. And
again.
don't
Tell me.
apologize for saying screw up. That's totally fine.
Thank you. But that's the hope I want to bring in my coaching practice and in my writing um, is to embrace the imperfection. How else are they going to learn that it's okay to feel their feelings, navigate the planet, you know, um, be real but still be respectful, all of those ethics that I want to bring to my parenting only happen if I'm modeling them, right? If I'm
Oh, that's so good.
I'm embracing who I am and where I am.
That is so good. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let me ask this question because based off what you said, it sounds like you're saying that thriving in motherhood doesn't really look the way we expect it to look.
Right.
Mm. But what I do want to hear, and then you share your story, but I do want to hear how how your story actually challenged your idea of thriving.
Hmm. Good. Um, Probably, a good example of that is bringing my expectation to my parenting and to my girls, was something that I had to let go of. They came to the planet to be authentically who they are, and including their career path and who they chose to be friends with and who they, um, ultimately would marry, that kind of thing. Um, So I have a master's degree, and education is really important to me. But my oldest went on to college and got a degree pretty much in the traditional way. But my youngest, nope, that was not for her. And she chose to um, go to an equine college, which was a year certificate program, and she has had a beautiful career since then. She's actually worked as an equine professional on a military base, working with disabled kids and vets with PTSD. So, who am I to dictate? You got to do the college track and you got to do it perfectly, and it needs to happen in 4 years, and this is what it looks like. Even my oldest, when she was putting together her degree, I was like, oh, we'll figure out the money. I'm a grant writer because of my nonprofit background also. And so I said, we'll figure out the money. We'll work out the grants. Think about where you want to go. It doesn't have to be in Texas, which is where we lived at the time. And she said, nope, I'm going to stay at home because of XYZ. I can work in the zoo, um, and build my own psychology, cultural anthropology mix of animal behavior. And sure enough, that led her to work on dredged ships doing sea turtle counts eventually. So her path was her way. She didn't want to leave home, and she had a reason for it because of the degree plan that she was putting together. And, if I had dictated what that looked like, she wouldn't have the creative career she has because she had her own ideas. Now, that's just in career development, but that applies to everything. They have their own voice and vote. They may not get veto power, but they have their own perspective, right? And one of the things we talk about in sociology is agency, this idea that kids have their own social agency, which means they exert just as much influence on the world as we hope to exert onto them. And so when we know that, we can back off a little bit and go, it's their life. And they're growing up in a time of very different social variables than we have grew up with. And so my parenting can't look like the way I was parenting. It's just a different world.
Oh, that's so good. Oh my
I
gosh.
rattled on too
So,
much, Denise. I'm sorry.
no, I love that. Look, I love that. And I'm sure the mamas on the other end can attest to the fact that they have probably got a lot out of what you just said. Like, pretty much what you said was let them be them. Because
Yeah,
honestly, the way we were raised, like, we were kind of raised a certain way. Like, this is a phrase I would hear, like, we wear their name, like, we represent them, which is
exactly.
interesting. But honestly, we represent ourselves. And so we would try to do everything we could so we didn't make mama and daddy look bad. And
Hmm.
in all honesty, you would probably agree to this, that children are never parents look bad. They're just trying to figure
Right.
life out.
Exactly. Yeah, I always say, and to my coaching clients, behavior is communication. We're going to try to consciously be aware of how we communicate with them, but their communication back to us is how they're behaving. And it's not about right or wrong, even. It's not about black and white or good or bad. It's about what need needs to be met at this moment.
Oh, so
And then we
good.
can
Oh, that's
teach
so
them
good.
how to share that need, right? We can teach them how to share that need in a way that works for everybody.
Man, that's amazing. I don't know what's going on with this in here, but I'm here. We're rolling. So thank you for
Okay.
that. Thank you for that. Because a lot of people, when they look at behavior. So a lot of parents get triggered by how their children behave, and they often get triggered because of whatever is going on in their lives that they haven't dealt with. Um, so a lot of times we think that we should do it the way we were raised, kind of like you were saying it before. But
Mm-hmm.
when one thing I've noticed is that we as moms do not have a network of people who we can really rely on. Like back in the day, we had a village,
Yeah.
but now,
Yeah.
not so much. But I hear that you believe that co-creating support networks is critical. So I want to know why you believe that. I'm sure I know why, but I want the mamas to hear why you believe that. But also not just for them, but also for addressing the mental health needs of our tweens and our teens.
Thanks so much. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, as you well know, because we talked about it before. But I'm, we parent in isolation today, which is such a juxtaposition because we're on social media 24/7, and the perception is we're connected to others. But that's just one filter, and we're not really connected in a full emotional, spiritual, psycho-spiritual way, So there's a lot of pressure that society puts on mamas, a whole lot of pressure. And the one thing that, and even traditional psychology does that. They'll tell you that the first 5 years of life are the most important. And for the brain development, I get it, they are. Nutritionally, um, a sense of safety and security, all of that's really important. I'm not dissing that in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying that we got to add a layer on top of that, that one of the reasons that we are, you'll hear teachers talk about misbehavior in school. You'll hear grandparents talk about, I would have never said that to my parent, the way you're saying it to me now. And so there's a lot of pressure on parents to control kids and to help their behavior conform, um, with this model that it's all on the parent. And the truth is, we don't have the societal supports that we used to have. Yes, kids are spending time in school and they have teachers, but those teachers rotate and they don't know them throughout, their scholastic career. So there's a lack of intimacy there, in the other supports. Kids aren't going to church, and I'm not necessarily religious. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that they don't have that other check system, of the community saying the same thing about treat each other fairly, you know, um, putting forth the ethics of quote unquote good behavior that we want, because it's all on the parent to teach this. And the parents working, 8 to 10 hours a day, sometimes got a side gig, you know, um, trying to make the economic part of the family life work. And then who's with the kid? Well, we toss an iPad to them and a screen, and that's what's parenting their time. And it's easy to point the finger back and blame the parent, but if you don't have the societal supports underneath that parent, my point is the models that we used to have had lots of support, and right now our social institutions are crumbling. So where is the extended family? In backing that up, where's the neighborhood? Where's Mrs. Johnson on the street that watched the kids after school, and made sure that if Johnny skinned his knee, there was a first aid kit, Band-Aids, and washing off, and she was a safe house for the kids in the neighborhood. That's how I grew up with my little bicycle gang. We don't have that kind of interdependency anymore. And so there's so much pressure laid on parents, and then parents get blamed. So if we want families to thrive, if we want motherhood to thrive, it's got to be because we intentionally set up our own support networks for each other. And it doesn't take a lot of money. You would hear from, and Denise, if I'm not giving you enough time to talk, I'm sorry. I could just
No,
rattle
no,
on.
you're good. No, this is good.
If I'm a single mom and I'm on my own and I got out of a bad situation, and hello, I did, then I'm setting up kind of an after school play date, family cooperative. or even on a weekend, can your kids come over and spend the night at my house, and then mine come over and spend the night at your house, so that, or even just a family game night, where we all get together as single moms, where we'll share cooking and recipes and responsibility for each other's kids, so that we can go to the grocery store by ourselves, or we can go get a haircut, or we can go out on a date if that's what we choose to do, but we feel like our kids are safe because we set up that cooperation between parents, and that's something that's missing, and life is so fast that we don't stop to take a breath and go, okay, let me map out who this support network is. Where are my grandparents? What technology can I use for grandparents to connect with my kid and read a book at night, so that I can finish, the dinner. I can subcontract out some of this family life. And I'm not saying you give up responsibility. I'm saying you bring the village in, right?
So good.
Okay.
That's so good. No, so you said a couple things that I really want to bring out. So one thing I've noticed about my generation and probably the generation after me is that they focus on being independent, which to me,
Mm,
I just don't think that that's any kind of way to really live life. I believe we were created to be interdependent, which is what you said. You were talking about the importance of interdependency, like being
yeah.
interdependent, because all of us are good in certain areas and we are all able to help each other in certain areas. And I believe when we focus on being interdependent, but also being strong in who we are, it helps us. And then that will also give us the ability to actually do what you said a little after that, which is map out your support network. Ooh, that was just mind boggling. I love that because we have the tools to do that. And I promise you, I've never heard this before until today. Thankfully, I already have a support network, but I just never thought about for the mamas who don't, how do they even start? Like, start by mapping it out, figuring out.
Yeah. They live exhausted. They yell at their kids. They're coming from that authoritarian mindset because it's sort of militaristic, because you have to make life work. You're under so much pressure all the time. But if you want to do the intentional things of conscious communication, affirming your child's authenticity, that takes a place in life where you've got support. And you're not doomed. You're not a victim. You can set up that support. And like I said, it doesn't take money. You cooperate with neighbors. You make friends with other single parents. You find safe people in safe places that you feel good about your kids being with, that can truly be mentors to your children. Sometimes that's coaches on a sports team. If you've got a single male child and you need positive male networks, you say that. I mean, you say not positive male mentors, I'm sorry.
No, we
And
get it.
watch for those opportunities, right? My point is, I had to be really intentional about who really, it's a co-created idea between your child and you about who the safe people are, because they have to be able to trust and open up to that person. So you've got to have the good skills to be able to talk about, how you feel around this person. What do you think they value? What do you admire about them? And those open-ended questions like that establish good communication. When we dictate terms and we're not drawing out your child's thoughts, actions, and feelings, from what they need to share, then we miss them learning how to communicate respectfully and communicate by standing up for themselves. Oftentimes when I hear a parent complaining about bullying in schools, it's because they were bullied at home and we didn't realize it. We were the ones bullying them because we didn't allow their voice and their vote in the process. And it starts early. It starts at 2 years old. You want to wear the blue shirt or the red shirt? So that sense of agency, like I was talking about, gets developed.
Oh, wow.
So I have to approach my life by looking for these support networks with a sense of agency, and I get to model that for my kids as well.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So I've never heard of the idea, but it makes so much sense that the idea of the kids being bullied at school is because they're being bullied at home. I just never,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I never really thought about that. And but that kind of will help our moms kind of just pause for a minute and just be aware, like, oh my gosh, have I been the one at home bullying my kid?
Shutting,
Because
shutting
oftentimes,
them down, right? Shutting them down. Do it now. I don't want to hear the argument. No back talk. Okay, well that causes your kid to shut down, right? And it takes
um,
time to dig in and engage them. Tell me what you really want right now. Are you tired? You need to get a snack. You need a hug. What's going on for you right now, and helping them articulate their inner world. And if we haven't done that, they're not going to stand up to others if they can't be safe with us.
So one thing you just did was pretty much you said ask questions, higher, open-ended questions, because what I've noticed is that sometimes as moms, we ask the wrong question. And oftentimes it's, well, why'd you do that? The kid doesn't know why they did
Right.
it.
We have to do the emotional detective work for sure.
Ah, yes, but
And no, again, going back to what we were talking about, no one does that perfectly, right? It's a skill you learn over time.
and I believe that oftentimes as moms, some of us have a hard time doing that because we don't feel like we have ever been able to connect emotionally, truly emotionally with some other people or even with our parents.
Right.
So this can even be a moment where I feel like this is possibly a moment where there's some moms that are going to be empowered to break that cycle of not connecting emotionally with their children. And this is look, this is amazing already. But I do want to ask this question, like, what are some common misconceptions? Because there's some moms who may have thought about, okay, I need a village, but what are some misconceptions that some moms may have about creating a support system?
Hmm. Good. Excuse me. I want to speak briefly to what you said right before that question,
Oh, yeah.
um, because that's what the conscious parenting movement is all about. Is I am doing my homework on my own inner world so that I show up as emotionally clean and present with my child and not projecting onto them those past traumas or mistakes that I was part of. And so if I am, being true to my inner world and I'm able to say, I feel stressed or I feel excited that you get to go on a field trip or I feel, you know, um, really tired and I'm going to need some extra help tonight, then that models for your child that it's okay to talk about feelings. And that's where that bullying comment came in, that when we're talking about feelings and we've created a family culture of that, that's when we begin to break the cycle, right? We high stress families don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And
Ooh,
families that have a conscious communication are talking, trusting, and feeling. And that's
love
what
it.
inoculates your kids from pressures outside. Is it perfect? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that that's the beginning to deal with our own trauma so we don't project that onto them. And it's a lifetime work.
Yeah.
It is a lifetime work. And we don't do it by ourselves. So when we come to this idea of co creating our support networks, your question was the how of that. How do I, um, or the misconceptions that we might have about that. Um, it's first identifying the safe people in your life, right? Who you can be emotionally real with, um, and then who you would trust your kid with. And that may be a small handful of people in the beginning, but my, I guess the message I want to get through is this idea of agency. I'm not a victim here. Yes, society is saying we put a lot of weight on parents. Yes, society doesn't provide me with the same supports. That's right. But, our kids still have to navigate the planet. And I still have to do the best I can do as a parent. And so that doesn't mean I surrender to the powerlessness stance or the
Mhm.
victimhood stance of that. It means that I intentionally seek safe people that I can be emotionally connected to. And I would look in the schools, to the teachers and the coaches in their lives and get feedback. I would look to extended family that lives far away and be really intentional about the technology that we use, that we pull them into daily life, right? That we share the funny moments, that we share, prayers at night and stories at night, and that we can be connected to extended family with kids today, and they can feel that they're a part of that. Um, Sharing family stories is really important to a sense of identity for kids. That's also a big deal. But I would just say be really intentional about who the safe people are in your life and identify those mom friends that are going through the same thing as you, and identify those that are rung up on the ladder. My job as a parent who has launched kids and now enjoying grandparenthood, which is not easy. Sometimes I have to keep my mouth shut because I wouldn't do it that way. Right. But my job is to look back to the moms that are 10 years younger than me that are going through the teen years now, and their job is to look back to the young moms with the kid that's throwing a tantrum in the grocery store and saying, I got you, mama, and distract the baby so that she can pay, that we create this sense of support around parenthood in both those little micro relationships and the larger ones that last a lifetime, like the mentors and the extended family that you want your kids to be able to call upon.
That is good. Oh my gosh. You just broke down like almost all the way. You just broke it down like we can do this. So you just showed me that no matter what, if I say I can't do it, it's because I'm really not taking the time to just stop and figure it out. Which I think
Mm-hmm.
is so important because oftentimes we get so caught up in what we're doing that we feel like we can't do anything else. But I believe that this is something that we cannot live without, especially
Right.
based off what you just said. And it's so funny because I pass by, even in shopping, I pass by a lot of moms. It just seems like it's just them. They're doing it all by themselves. They're trying to figure it out. Their kids are kind of like playing around the place.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, like I was at Target one day and this lady had her small kids and they were kind of their kids. They were kind of playing around. One kid was in the buggy, then two other ones were kind of around. They weren't very loud, but they were kind of around in the space. And I believe that other moms would have probably stopped the lady or said something to the kids or looked crazy. And I looked at her and said, hey, thank you for letting your kids be kids because
Nice.
oftentimes we
Nice.
don't do that. And she said, thank you for not being upset. And I thought, whoa, I guess there
Right.
would be people that would be upset, which is crazy.
Right.
But even if we don't have that connection yet, as we're building it, at least try to live a life where we can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Mom friendly or mom
Mm-hmm.
family friendly.
Right. It starts with me. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And if I want to feel supported in my parenthood, then I reach out to somebody around me. And it's a reciprocal thing. It's amazing what I get back from that. It's just one of those spiritual truisms that is really true, that when I give that support, I find I get that support because all of a sudden my radar's up for it.
Oh,
So
I
I
love that.
think that it's also being willing to be vulnerable, saying, "Oh my God, I'm just too tired. I need help. I'm overwhelmed." Um, and of course, you're overwhelmed. No one has parented kids in a digital age before. We don't have the longitudinal studies as to what that looks like. We've
Yeah.
not had that. We don't know what it's like to be a solo nuclear family in a city without extended family support around. We used to do it all together. We used to not have to think about the village, and now we have to consciously pull that in.
Oh my gosh. Oh, look, that's such a great point because it's funny because I was at my daughter's school. So I'm the president of the PTA at her school. And we were
Mm-hmm.
in the parent room. We had some kids getting like haircuts and their nails polished. And they had books in there. So let me look at some of these books. And they had some books about raising kids in the digital age.
Oh,
Because
cool. Okay.
and I got one. I was like, oh, let me get this because it's rough. It's really rough. It's different because even for me, internet was not mainstream until I was somewhere in my 20s.
Right.
So
Right.
So
Right.
for me, it's like, okay, I know how to switch off, but they don't always know how to switch off because they've always been on, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But anywho, because I've kind of taken it off a little bit, but that's okay. So I would like to know, and you kind of shared some, but are there any more practical steps that moms can take today to start building or even strengthening their own network of support?
Sure. Um, Several things. We medicalize and therapize everything, and so I have to give credo to that. That you can certainly get therapeutic support, but the kind of support that I'm talking about is much more practical and much more communal. Um, so I think you look for your village, and if you can't find your village and somebody you can identify with, then you create it. You co-create it. The cool thing about being in a digital age is that we have access to Facebook groups. We have access to this idea of creating meetups, locally. And I'm not saying do it in an unsafe way. Um, but there are, township mom groups, and you can pull off and have private conversations and get to know somebody and meet in a safe location. There's libraries where you can find mom groups. There's churches. The point is to reach out if you need help and build these cooperative relationships where and exchanges, kind of like a parent co-op, so that you get not just a break, but a safe. Um, I want to say it's kind of like dual messaging, because what happened in times where technology wasn't so rapid is that the neighbor was saying the same thing about the ethics and treating each other fairly. The school was saying the same thing. Your parents said the same thing. The grandparents said the same thing. And that created this net of consistent support around kids. And of course, you got a little bit of a break too, but you didn't feel like the whole pressure of the relationship was totally on you. So you have to watch for those safe people. You got to interview them just like you'd interview them for a job. You got to be willing to be vulnerable and find those mentors that can connect to you and your kids. There are divorce support groups. Hospitals have them. Um, Churches have them. The the point is they have free babysitting for some of those. Um, Expose your kid to community assets, because that is what supports the family network in a conscious way. You
Oh my
aren't in
gosh.
the alone is the big lie. And if there isn't one in your small rural town, then you create it. You're not the only person in this.
That is so good. So it was quite a few things that you said, but I want to bring this one. You said alone is a big lie, and that's the truth, because when we're alone, we think we got it all together. We don't, because we're only sufficient in a certain array of things anyway. And then you said, like, find your community assets and expose your children to community assets. And if you can't find one, create it.
Right.
And it's just mind blowing. I love that. Like, just simply create one. And you even talked about how you can find one at a library, at some churches. Like, there's so many different places that you can find it. But I do have one more question. And this question comes from a deep place for me, because this is something that I dealt with my oldest. I think she was 14 at the 14 or 15. I think she was 14. But so before I ask a question, I'm just going to kind of paint this. And trigger warning for any moms who have dealt with themselves or have had kids that had thoughts of unaliving themselves. Trigger warning. So my daughter, when she was 14, she went through a moment. This was shortly after my mom passed, and she was
Mm.
suicidal. And I, at first, I kind of felt it, but it was, she was probably there for a long time, at least depressed. And one day I was trying to go to bed. I think I had a baby. I had a baby at the time. She was like 11 months old. And then she was 14. And I was just feeling like I needed to go in there. It's like I kept having this feeling that I needed to go and check on her, like something wasn't right. So I went in the room, and she had a very interesting demeanor. And I kept trying to ask her. She didn't want to tell me. And she said, I don't want to tell you, Mom, because I don't want you to cry. And I said,
Mm.
sweetheart, if crying means I'm going to get you some help, let me cry, you know? And so that's when she told me. But thankfully, she was already seeing a therapist, and her therapist was like, yeah, you need to take her to get her seen. And that was one of the best decisions that I ever made. But one thing I want to ask you is that when it comes to the tween and teen mental health crisis, what roles can moms and their support systems play in making a meaningful difference?
Thank you so much for asking about this and for sharing your story bravely. I really appreciate the vulnerability because you are not alone. There are tons of parents facing the same issue.
Yeah.
And the reason our kids are struggling so much is, yes, we live in an era that is feelings and mentally health aware now, and I'm grateful for that. But there's not enough therapists to go around for every single child to have therapy, unfortunately. That's just the truth. So we have to create communities where it's okay for us to talk about mental health issues and share that and have adults that are emotionally available and equipped to deal with these kinds of crises. And I want to share, obviously, I'm a parenting coach and come from a family sociology background. So coaching can be really helpful to parents to learn how to talk about these mental health issues. There's a great website, and you can record it with mine. um,
Mhm.
I have lauralreagan.com, and I have a couple of blogs about this, and I have some videos on TikTok about parents, how parents can talk to kids about suicide prevention, um, and any mental health issue, really. But I love, love, love the resource. It's called Society for Teen Suicide Prevention. And I will send you the link and make sure we put it together with my link, and we'll get
Thank
parents
you.
the help they need. But there are 4 research-based questions that you literally ask your teen about these heartfelt, real issues. Whatever their self-talk is in their head, we have to be able to engage them in a way that's safe for them to disclose that. So the first one is, and this is I just love the brilliance, the simple brilliance of this, because it gets right in. Has any, you'd be driving in the car. Has any of your kids ever talked, your kids, listen to me, have any of your friends ever talked about having a mental health issue with you? Um, and usually they're willing to disclose that, yeah, Johnny's on antidepressants. And, when Sarah broke up with Ryan, she was depressed for a weekend. She even talked about cutting her wrist. They'll share that about a friend where they might not share it with you. And then
Mm.
um, that's why I say these are stair step research based questions. They're amazing. And the second one is, have you ever thought about that?
Mm.
Um, yeah, when grandma died, I was thinking about death, and it kind of freaked me out. And um, yeah, I did think about it. Okay. Well, thanks for telling me. I really appreciate your trust. And then you graduate to the next question. And let me pause for a minute, because if they say, no, Mom, I would never do that, then you drop it and you don't go to question number 3, right?
Mm.
Because that's where that teen is in that moment, or that preteen is in that moment. We have kids committing suicide as early as 8 years old these days. So it's heartbreaking. Again, I believe from the sociology side, is because we don't have the societal supports underneath. Kids tend to get isolated, and we're laying all of this responsibility on parents. But the third question, getting back to it, is, okay, they disclosed that they've thought about it. Can you tell me more? When you did think about it, how would you do that?
Mm.
So that you discern whether or not there was a plan there. And then what the fourth question is, how what made you not act upon it when you thought about it?
Mm.
What stopped you? Well, I knew you would be really sad. Or, who would take care of the dog?
Oh.
Or I was really looking forward to graduation, and I didn't want to miss it. And that's when you come in with the affirmation. Oh my God, I would be terribly sad. I would be heartbroken. You are so important to my family and our family, and you use that information to feed the affirmations to them. Um, our family would not be the same without you. It's an opportunity to really connect and use affirmation to do that as your bridge to do that. So you give a real heartfelt emotional response to that. And then you're able to say, there is help for all of us, and we're not alone, and we're going to find the help um, that will get us through this. And
Oh my
get the resources that you need.
This is so good. And it's so good because that was very simple. I don't see one mom here who cannot use this. Not one.
Right.
Especially if they have a kid that's dealing with this, or even if they're feeling like their kid is dealing with that, because I mean, it's not a fun place to be in. But one thing I do want to mention is that oftentimes, like, even though this is about moms showing up and thriving, what's so important is that even though we are still people, we're also still moms. And so, in order for us to thrive, not only do we thrive in our individuality, but we have to also thrive as a parent. And being able to thrive individually helps us thrive as a parent. And being able to thrive as a parent also helps us to thrive individually. So I personally want to say thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. These are not my research-based questions. The other research-based family communication model is mine, but I just love it because it's so incredibly simple. It really does build on connection, and I think that's what's so important, Denise, is that you talked about that this generation feels that they must parent independently. They've swallowed that social norm. And the reality is the reason we're seeing mental health issues is because of that norm being thrust upon us when it's not part of our humanity. We were intended to be social. We were intended to be in community. We were intended to be in supporting villages. And in many ways, the enemy that we see right now with our teens is because of the lack of connection in their lives. And thriving is all about connection, right? As we've talked about all our interview, thriving is all about connection. So we get to model that for our kids.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that because to me, you cannot thrive truly without community. Like it's almost
Mm-hmm.
like how can you face thrive without your nose? my mom,
Exactly.
my
Exactly.
mom used to have this phrase. She would say, "Don't cut your nose to spite your
At your
face."
face. Yes, yes, I've heard that. Exactly. Yeah.
And so,
And the independence is a phase towards maturity. Interdependence is mature adulthood. Interdependence is very adolescent. Independence is very adolescent. Do
wow,
it my
that is
way.
that's good to know.
So we're
So,
stuck when we feel like we have to do it all ourselves and we believe that lie of aloneness. That's an adolescent part of ourselves, right? That is swallowing this, very youth culture driven culture that we live in. But the mature space, psychospiritually, is this interdependence
so
that
let
we
me
get
ask
to.
this question. And I'm not trying to step on any toes when I ask this question, but you said that independence is adolescent. And
It's
so
a phase of adolescence, right?
so it feels as if like those of us who are trying to be independent, could it be that when we were younger, that we were just not giving the independence or we didn't get to feel that we could be independent around our families? Or like you said, they kind of shut down everything you said.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a necessary part of a budding adulthood to find our identities and use our voice and speak our truths. All of that's right on, right? But it's a phase that we then pass through so that we can live in connection and harmony with others.
Oh,
Um,
that is so good.
because I live in harmony with others when I speak my truth, right? Like
Yes.
today, like today.
And I love your truth. Your truth is beautiful. It
And
is
so are you. And so are
it
you. I
is
really honor your daughters and your
thank
journey.
you. I'm just so grateful that we had a chance to cross paths because you're saying a lot of things that I believe in, but not only that, you've taken it like to a whole nother level for me. So this has
Yeah,
been amazing, and I definitely want to make sure that we collaborate again in the future because, like, yeah, this is amazing. But one thing I
absolutely.
do want to ask is there anything else that you want to make sure that you leave the mamas with before we tell them see you later?
Yes, absolutely. We mentioned earlier about engaging your kids in a new way, right? Offering choices and providing them with a sense of agency. And agency just means choice making ability that they can exert influence in their world in a positive way. That's what builds self esteem and things. Um, and one way to do that is the conscious communication model that I've developed. And one of the skills there that we mentioned was open ended questions that instead of telling them what to do, you can solicit their opinions and their thoughts. Well, what would you do next? Do you want to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt? And okay, we've only got a certain amount of time before, we've got to get to bed. Think about the activities that need to be accomplished. What do you think needs to happen first? When we
Oh,
use open ended questions, we're building skills for the future. And I have a list of 20 of them on my website at lauralreagan.com. And it's called Conversation Starters. And it's all about building this kind of conscious connection.
and I did download that. It's beautiful.
Oh, great. Thanks.
It is beautiful. So we will make sure that we have that link below this video right here so that
Great.
they will be able, our beautiful mamas will be able to get their hands on that. But besides that, what is the freebie? Is that the freebie that you have for them, or
It
do you have
is.
some? Okay,
Well, there's
perfect.
lots of free resources on that website. There's also a no conflict communication checklist so that you don't hook their defenses when you ask them to do something. You can do it in this softer, respectful way that really connects to their hearts. And then, of course, I've got the TikTok videos about the 4 questions from the Society for Teen Suicide Prevention. So there's lots of resources that are free on that website.
Oh, I love it. So yes, we would definitely have that link right below. And then I do want to ask, besides TikTok, are there any other places that the mamas can stay connected with you on?
Oh, thanks for that. I have a Facebook group called Brave Parents Raising Teens because I tend to focus on the preteen and teen mental health crisis and solutions, I should say. So that's available on Facebook, the website for sure. And I also have a book out called How to Raise Respectful Parents. That is,
Love
you can
that.
get the first 2 chapters downloaded um, off of my website as well.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so mamas, all of this information is going to be below this video. But what I want you to do is make sure that you get connected with Miss Laura. I like to say Laura, sorry. The
Claro que
Spanish comes
sí.
out. With Miss Laura, please stay connected with her because this information, like, I really wish that I had you when my now 22-year-old was 14, when she was going through those issues, because I didn't understand it. I mean, I was kind of working through the conscious parenting, but I wasn't there like I am now. But of course, I did beat myself up about it. But mamas, this is the time for you so that hopefully you don't have to go through the little pitfalls or get in the trenches like we had to. Maybe there'll be ways for you to not have to go through this, but please stay connected with Miss Laura because this right here has been amazing.
Thank you.
So, before we go, just to make sure, is there anything else? Because this has just been amazing to me.
Oh, thank you. Just reach out, stay vulnerable and reach out. That would be um, my banner, advice, and is to, if you're feeling alone, don't buy into that. It's okay to feel your feelings, but it's not the social reality. We do have the power to co-create our meaning and our sense of community.
Ah, that's amazing. I'm so excited for the mamas who are going to connect with you and who are going to save their children, their preteens and their teens from whatever it is that they're probably going through right now. So thank you so much. And beautiful
Thank
mamas, I
you.
want to thank you so much for being a part of this summit. And we will definitely see you all next time. And if no one else has told you this again, I love you to life. And I'll see you next time.
Thank